What if I told you that in the first 7 seconds of meeting someone, their brain has already decided whether you're a threat, an opportunity, or completely irrelevant, and that this decision will shape every interaction you have with them going forward? The most influential people throughout history understood something that modern psychology has now proven. Likability isn't about being nice or agreeable. It's about triggering specific psychological responses that make people feel comfortable, important, and genuinely drawn to your presence. Here's the uncomfortable truth that nobody talks about. People don't like you for who you are. They like you for how you make them feel about themselves. This isn't cynical manipulation. This is human nature. Every interaction is an emotional transaction where people are unconsciously asking, does this person make me feel better or worse about myself? Master this psychology, and you master the art of influence. Ignore it, and you'll spend your life wondering why opportunities, relationships, and connections seem to flow so easily to others. Today, I'm going to reveal the psychological triggers that make people instantly drawn to you. Not because you're pretending to be someone else, but because you understand how the human mind actually works. These aren't social tricks or fake techniques. These are the fundamental patterns of human psychology that the most charismatic leaders, successful entrepreneurs, and influential figures use intuitively. They work because they're based on how our brains are wired to respond to certain social cues. The first psychological trigger is what I call the validation reflex. Human beings have an insatiable hunger to feel seen, understood, and acknowledged. Most people are walking around feeling invisible, unimportant, and unheard. When you genuinely notice something specific about someone and acknowledge it, you're feeding a psychological need that rarely gets satisfied. But here's the key. It has to be authentic and specific, not generic compliments that everyone gives. Instead of saying, "nice shirt," you might say, "that color really brings out your eyes," or "you have great taste in vintage pieces." Instead of "good presentation," you might say, "the way you explained that complex concept made it crystal clear. You have a gift for taking complicated ideas and making them accessible." The difference is specificity and authenticity. Generic compliments feel empty because they require no real attention or thought. Specific observations prove that you actually saw them as an individual, not just another face in the crowd. The psychology behind this is profound. When someone feels truly seen by you, their brain releases a small hit of dopamine, the same neurotransmitter involved in addiction. You become associated with feeling good about themselves. But more importantly, you've demonstrated that you pay attention to details that matter to them, which signals that you're someone worth knowing. People are drawn to those who notice what others miss. The second trigger is strategic vulnerability. This might seem counterintuitive, but controlled self-disclosure actually makes people like you more, not less. When you share something slightly personal or admit to a minor flaw or struggle, you're activating what psychologists call the pratfall effect. Perfect people are intimidating and hard to relate to. People with minor imperfections seem more human, more approachable, and more trustworthy. The key word here is strategic. You're not oversharing or dumping your problems on people. You're revealing calculated vulnerabilities that make you more relatable without making you seem unstable or needy. Maybe you mention that you're terrible with directions and always get lost, or that you have an irrational fear of butterflies, or that you once completely forgot an important meeting because you were so absorbed in a book. These small admissions of imperfection actually make you more likable because they give others permission to be imperfect too. From a psychological standpoint, vulnerability creates emotional reciprocity. When you share something personal, the other person feels compelled to share something back. This creates a sense of mutual trust and connection that forms the foundation of all meaningful relationships. But the vulnerability has to be authentic. People can sense when you're manufacturing relatability, and that backfires completely. The third psychological trigger is the power of genuine curiosity. Most people in conversations are waiting for their turn to talk, mentally rehearsing what they'll say next instead of actually listening to what's being said. But when you demonstrate genuine curiosity about someone's thoughts, experiences, or perspectives, you're giving them something incredibly rare: your full attention. And attention in our distracted world has become one of the most valuable gifts you can give. The magic happens when you ask follow-up questions that show you're actually processing what they've told you. If someone mentions they just moved from Chicago, most people might say, "Oh, cool," and change the subject. But someone who understands psychology might ask, "What's the biggest difference you've noticed between living there and here?" Or, "What do you miss most about Chicago?" These questions show that you're genuinely interested in their experience, not just making small talk. Here's the deeper psychology. When people feel heard and understood, they attribute positive qualities to the person who made them feel that way. They assume you're intelligent, empathetic, and trustworthy, not because of anything you said about yourself, but because of how skillfully you drew them out. This is why the best conversationalists often say very little about themselves, but leave others feeling like they've had an amazing conversation. The fourth trigger is emotional mirroring, but not in the obvious way most people think. It's not about copying someone's body language or speaking patterns. That's amateur hour, and people can sense it. Advanced emotional mirroring is about matching someone's emotional energy and communication style in subtle ways that feel natural. If someone is excited and animated, you show enthusiasm in return. If someone is thoughtful and reserved, you slow down and become more reflective. If someone is analytical, you engage with their logic. If someone is creative, you appreciate their imagination. The key is flexibility. Charismatic people are emotional chameleons who can adapt their communication style to make others feel comfortable without losing their own authenticity. They understand that different people need different types of interaction to feel connected. Some people connect through humor, others through intellectual discussion, others through emotional sharing, and others through shared activities or goals. This connects to something Robert Greene discusses in The Art of Seduction. The most influential people make others feel like they're the most interesting person in the room. They do this by adapting their own energy to complement and enhance the other person's natural style. It's not about being fake. It's about being strategically flexible in how you express your genuine interest in others. The fifth psychological trigger is the assumption of rapport. This is one of the most powerful techniques, but it requires confidence to execute properly. Instead of trying to build rapport from scratch, you act as if rapport already exists. You speak to new people with the warmth and familiarity you'd normally reserve for old friends. You make gentle assumptions about shared experiences, values, or interests, and see if they resonate. For example, instead of asking, "Do you like traveling?" you might say, "I bet you have some amazing travel stories," or "You seem like someone who's had some interesting adventures." Instead of, "What kind of music do you like?" you might say, "You strike me as someone with eclectic taste in music." These assumptive statements create a sense of instant connection because they suggest that you already see them as interesting and complex. The psychology here is fascinating. When you assume positive qualities about someone, they feel compelled to live up to that assumption. It's called the Pygmalion effect. People tend to behave in ways that confirm others' expectations of them. When you assume someone is interesting, intelligent, or experienced, they'll often prove you right by sharing their most interesting thoughts and experiences. The sixth trigger is the gift of status elevation. Everyone wants to feel important, but most people only feel important when they're putting others down or proving their superiority. Psychologically sophisticated people understand that you can make others feel important by recognizing their expertise, asking for their opinion, or positioning them as someone with valuable knowledge or experience. This might sound like, "I'd love to get your perspective on this. You seem like someone who really understands people," or "Based on your experience in marketing, what do you think about this approach?" Or "You clearly have good instincts about these things. What's your read on the situation?" You're not being fake or manipulative. You're genuinely recognizing that every person has unique knowledge and perspectives that you can learn from. The beautiful part of status elevation is that it costs you nothing, but makes the other person feel valued and respected. When someone feels like you see them as knowledgeable or experienced, they immediately like you more because you've confirmed their own positive self-image. They'll associate you with feeling smart, capable, and important. The seventh and perhaps most important trigger is authentic presence. This isn't a technique, it's a way of being. Authentic presence means being fully engaged in the current moment and interaction without the agenda, distraction, or performance. It means listening not to respond, but to understand. It means being genuinely interested in the person in front of you, rather than thinking about what impression you're making or what you'll say next. Most people are so focused on managing their image or controlling outcomes that they're never actually present. They're thinking about how they look, what they should say, whether they're being impressive enough, or what they need to do later. But when you're authentically present, people can feel it. Your energy is focused on them rather than on yourself, and that creates a magnetic quality that draws people in. Here's the paradox that most people miss. The more you try to be liked, the less likable you become. Desperation and neediness repel people because they signal insecurity and weakness. But when you're genuinely interested in others without needing anything from them, you become naturally attractive because you're offering something rare, authentic attention and appreciation. This connects to ancient Stoic wisdom about focusing on what you can control. You can control your own behavior, your own energy, and your own level of genuine interest in others. You cannot control whether people like you, and the moment you try to control that outcome, you become less likable. Outcome independence is attractive. Outcome dependence is repulsive. Now, here's where all these psychological triggers work together to create something powerful. When you combine genuine curiosity with strategic vulnerability, authentic presence with status elevation, and emotional mirroring with the assumption of rapport, you create an interaction style that makes people feel seen, valued, and understood. You're not manipulating them into liking you. You're creating conditions where their natural inclination to like people who make them feel good about themselves can flourish. But there's a deeper level to this that touches on fundamental human psychology. People are drawn to those who seem to have access to something they want: confidence, peace, success, interesting experiences, or simply the ability to make others feel good. When you master these psychological triggers, you're not just becoming more likable, you're becoming someone who adds value to every interaction. You're the person others want to be around because being around you makes them feel like a better version of themselves. The beautiful irony is that these skills serve everyone involved. You're not taking anything from people. You're giving them the experience of feeling appreciated, understood, and important. You're practicing what the ancient philosophers called virtue, using your capabilities to benefit both yourself and others. The most influential people throughout history understood that true power comes from making others feel powerful, that real status comes from elevating others, and that lasting relationships are built on mutual benefit rather than one-sided manipulation. Remember, people will forget what you said and what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. When you understand the psychology of making people like you instantly, you're not just improving your social skills, you're developing the ability to create positive emotional experiences for everyone you meet. And in a world where most people feel unseen, unheard, and unimportant, that ability becomes your greatest asset and your most valuable gift to others.